Hello there. How are you doing today? I'm glad that you have joined us. And as we're coming in the webinar room, I do want to thank you for coming today. And I do need to do a little bit of legal housekeeping before we get started. So Advice Chaser, the host of this webinar, is not a registered investment advisor. We cannot and do not give financial advice. Today's presentation is for educational purposes only and cannot be considered advice for any person's individual situation. Advice Chaser regularly hosts informative webinars, such as this one, featuring a variety of knowledgeable professionals, many of whom are licensed advisors. Any opinions, ideas, jokes, or principles expressed by presenters are their own, and however true, funny, or interesting are not endorsed by Advice Chaser. Please do not act on the information you hear today without consulting a qualified financial professional. Well, we are thrilled to bring you today's educational event, and a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Attendees are muted, but we do encourage you to ask questions using the chat box. The presenter and I have talked, and we're going to hold most of the questions today until the end. We do have a question and answer period. And so if you're not able to get your question answered, because sometimes we run out of time or we're not able to get to everyone's questions, go ahead and leave your phone number and your email address in the chat box as well, and we're happy to reach out to you after today's event. We want this experience to be as educational as possible, so please don't hesitate to ask for clarification or expansion of the material. I'd love to introduce you to our presenter today. Krisha Young is an executive coach, and she specializes in teaching powerful businesswomen how to have healthy relationships with themselves by going from powerful to empowered. Her specialty is pattern release coaching for high-performing women wanting to redefine feminine leadership, have healthy relationships, and be their true selves living in full color. In addition to being an entrepreneur, coach, serial podcaster, sales expert, published author, and mom of 2 boys, Krisha speaks a unique language of transformation developed through years of deep study and synthesizing modalities. And Krisha, I'm so excited to have you here. I will say that even though you specialize in working with women, this topic is not specific to any gender. And so we have probably not only women in the audience, so we're glad to have you here. And I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Marche. And yes, this is a human issue, not just a woman or man issue. Building resiliency in uncertain times, it's affecting everybody. So yeah, there's nobody excluded from this conversation. So thank you for mentioning that. And thank you for having me, and thank you for those of you joining the webinar. My goal is to educate, inspire, and open up some possibilities towards living a really beautiful, fruitful, and peaceful life. And I'm really glad that you're here taking the time to create prosperity for yourself. Just a little bit about me. Before becoming a coach in 2014, I worked at the C-suite level in top corporate companies in both Canada and the UK. And so I bring a wealth of knowledge and information from that type of world where, things are really stressful and outside of our control a lot of the times. And I've brought it over into working mainly with like entrepreneurs and professionals, and that helping them overcome those patterns of thinking that, cause them to repeat those negative results in their lives so that they can create like healthy, happy mindsets and ways of being in the world. And so this talk today is going to be a little divergent from what is usually spoken about here in terms of, protecting assets through financial planning or housing or whatnot, right? This talk is going to be about your inner wealth, right? And your decision-making process, and to help accumulate the outer wealth in a much more effective way. I do have notes, so if you see me looking down, it's just so that I stay on topic. All right, so the first slide, what is resiliency? So let's just start by defining that. Think of it this way. There's two types of materials used in building, right? We've got concrete, which is hard and it cracks under pressure. And then we have bamboo that is strong yet flexible and actually used as scaffolding. I don't know if you've ever seen images of this or seen it like in real life. It's like insane, like massive scaffolding made just out of bamboo. By the end of this talk, I want you to be like bamboo. Resiliency comes from the ability to be flexible, to roll with what's happening, to make clean and clear decisions from response, not from reaction, and to allow what's happening happen, and to create really powerful boundaries from the result, right? And we've all been blindsided by life, and our internal patterns from childhood and beyond create how we respond or react. And so sometimes we need to retrain our brain and our nervous system to be more adaptable and resilient like bamboo, and not so reactive and rigid like concrete. And we have a choice in how we respond. It sometimes feels like we don't, but we can shift that and be less reactive and punchy and feeling powerful instead of powerless in the face of uncertainty. In fact, we can thrive in it. All right, so the next slide, our brain is wired for danger. So I want to chat a little quickly about the brain here, or mind. We have this almond-shaped cluster of cells called the amygdala. And this part, it's in the back of the brain here. And this part of the brain regulates a few things. It's very primal in nature. It's lizard brain, and directly linked to our limbic or our emotional center in the body. Yes, we are emotional creatures, whether you like it or not, whether you were brought up to embrace it or not. I mean, it's a big conversation, emotions, but we are there, we have them. And what's happened is this system was designed to protect us from the saber-toothed tiger or poisonous plants. You know, it was designed to protect the tribe. And it's our primal instinct when the hairs on our arms stand up on edge and we know something is unsafe. The issue that we have nowadays is that we're no longer running away from saber-toothed tigers. We're now bombarded with stimuli that triggers this response system, coupled with our own developed patterns from childhood that explain your reactive behavior in an otherwise neutral stimulus, right? So the amygdala is the core fear system in the body, and the expression of that fear is what was conditioned upon us in childhood and how we grew up, right? So let's say if we grew up in some sort of like an angry house or something like that, right? We might, in the face of fear, we might get angry, or we might run or avoid, or we might freeze and people please our way to peace, right? This is part of that fight, flight, or freeze stroke fawn response system that you might have heard about. So think about it this way. A puppy to most people is just a puppy. It's just cute. And a tarantula to most people is scary and creepy, right? Why? Because each one has been conditioned to be one or the other. So when we see a puppy, we're like, ah, so safe. When we see a tarantula, we're like, oh my God. But what happens if, like, when you were little, you got mauled by a puppy? Like, now a puppy's not safe. Like, you're going to have a reaction to that. And what happens if you were super lonely as a kid and a tarantula was your only friend? Then tarantulas are a positive thing, right? So all of our reactions are based on, you know, our conditioning and how our belief system and how we see the world. So that's same creatures, but just a different conditioning expression. So if we look at the topic of uncertainty, this most certainly activates the amygdala for sure, because we don't know what's around the corner. Is it a puppy? Is it a tarantula? When things feel uncertain, it absolutely activates us for sure. And it's the entire picture, from our upbringing to how well we are at nurturing our nervous system to our mindset, that affects how confidently we face uncertainty. And I'm going to be getting into all of that in a minute. But first, today's modern reality, we've got a lot to deal with, right? We are overstimulated, overbooked. I mean, I don't know, maybe some of you right now are on your phone or working or doing something else while doing this, right? We have this multitasking myth that has been imposed on us that we should be doing 15 things at once. And it is too much. It's too much for us. We've seen so much unrest, politically and economically. The news is just like crazy these days. And it is almost impossible to feel at peace inside if your entire existence consists of work, juggling priorities, news, external pressures with zero self-management or self-awareness strategies. And then you add uncertainty on top of that. It's like, what? So now I know that without a doubt, every person here is going to have a COVID story. I've got a crazy one. It basically ended with me moving across country, living in a brand new city that I had no plans of doing that whatsoever. But here I am, and it's wonderful. For some people, when COVID hit, it meant that, and when I mean is the whole thing, not just if somebody got sick from it, right? But the whole economic, everything around it. It meant the end of work for some people, like big, massive shifts in careers and work. Families got torn apart, right? And then of course, like a lot of people died and a lot of people got sick, and it's on its own was really, really difficult, right? And to say that there's been uncertainty in the last 2 years is like the understatement of the century, I think. And we've all been on edge, like so much on edge. And we are all connected, right? And so when one person, you go into a room, if one person's in a bad mood, you're going to feel that bad mood from that person, right? And so if 8 billion people are feeling uncertain, we're all going to feel it together, right? And so I feel that we need to take it back to an individual level and do what we can to do our part to help one another. Then, on top of all of this, there's been the pressures at home. All of a sudden now, like when things were on lockdown, depending on where you were, you're now looking at the people in your house going, wait, what? Who are you? Should we still be together? Apparently there was a 34% increase in divorce template downloads in 2020. I'm not surprised at that at all. We were so busy before, ships in the night, not really paying attention. And then all of a sudden we're locked in this house together. Not to mention kids not going to school and the pressure of still having to work and doing that and the isolation. It was a lot, right? And now our economy is in the after effects of all of this fear and uncertainty, right? But then there's the people who thrived and the people who took the opportunity to say, oh yeah, this isn't working for me. So I'm going to use this time to go within and create something new for myself. And lots of new business opportunities came out. We're not here yet on that slide, Marche. It's okay. Lots of new business opportunities came out. And I know people who are making more money now and are more successful and more happy, now than ever before. It's all in your mindset and how you look at things. And if you change the way you look at things, how you look at things change. And that's from Wayne Dyer. Not to be dismissive of what happened. It was scary and very uncertain. However, we all have a bucket of adaptation when it comes to stress. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to now tell you how you can rewire your brain, reprogram those childhood patterns, create pristine decision-making and practical tools and strategies you can apply to help deal with uncertainty and create calm in your chaos. You need to keep that bucket empty and clear and ready for, for anything that can come in. So I want you to start thinking of yourself like a lion waiting for the gazelle and having fun with the chase, rather than the gazelle being blindsided and chased. Okay. So now we're going to talk about rewiring your brain. I'm pretty sure you've heard of the term emotional intelligence, or EQ, at this point, but if not, what it means basically is deep self-awareness and self-management that has been studied to find to have incredible positive effect on your overall success in life, from time management to decision-making and communication. And we could all use help with that, like in our personal relationships, right? EQ accounts for 58% of performance in all type of jobs. And the link between EQ and earnings is so direct that every point of EQ nets you an additional $1,300. Every point you go up, right? You're making more money. People with high EQ make 29 grand more than their counterparts. And I don't know about you, but I love making more money, 30 grand. Yes, please. The rewiring process happens when you devote yourself to strong awareness and self-management. When you become aware of your emotional states and what they mean, and when you have the skills to work through challenging and uncertain times, and when you know that your thoughts are what I call the lie that feels like the truth, it's a pattern, or is it your intuition telling you to be careful? So here's some quick examples of what it looks like to have high EQ and resilience versus not, right? So I'm sure we know all people like this, right? So somebody who has it, they're open, honest, authentic, they feel the feels and manage the emotions well. They don't fly off the handle or whatnot easily. They know themselves and they know what triggers them and when they're feeling triggered. They communicate well, they think on their feet, and they have patience and understanding. Somebody who doesn't have a high EQ is disaster hunting, right? This is where it's like, what if this goes wrong? What if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong, right? Like, just think about that panic, right? Panicking and blaming and lying to yourself, avoiding. A lot of people avoid, I'm not going to look at this. Maybe if I don't look at it, it'll go away. Or projecting and being demanding. Nobody's perfect. Even the people with the highest EQ can and do complain. They avoid, they become defensive, The key to remember here is, what is your baseline? What are you striving for? When you're stressed out, are you more or less likely to get into high EQ in that moment? So let's talk about decision-making and resilience. The next slide, please. Being aware of your consciousness level, right? Your emotional intelligence level helps you know what feels good and what feels like it's crossing a boundary. If you think you should say something, that's a boundary being crossed, right? So knowing that inside your mind and your body, and then knowing what to say if that happens, is key here. It's critical for job performance, and 83% who are high in EQ or self-consciousness are top performers because they know how to pursue the right opportunities, because they're aware of what's a yes, what's a no, and at a very deep level. And then they have no regrets, right? The decisions you make at this level are easy and they're seamless, and often result in way better than you can ever imagine, right? If you choose to stay unconscious or not self-aware, you might think that you're aware, but if you're in conflict, you've made an agreement somewhere that contradicts who you are at a core level, then something's off there. You're out of alignment with your values and who you truly are. Managing yourself is the ability for you to use this awareness of your emotions and boundaries and stay flexible like bamboo, right? So think about it. If you know someone who always needs to have the last word and be right and stick to their guns no matter what, this is someone who has a rigid and concrete mindset and will crack under pressure. They won't be adaptable and might have been somebody who really struggled during COVID, right? A lot of fear and need to control, fight, right? Or complete procrastination, denial, or avoidance, that flight, or a changing of who they are and what they want at a deep core level value, which is that freeze or fawn, right? So think of the kind of decisions that you make when you're panicked. It's not great. And I spend a lot of time with my clients helping undo contracts and relationships and stuff that they made as a result of poor decision making because they were in some sort of panicky state, right? Doing things like quitting or whatever in fear or anger, it causes regret and it's not good decision making, right? Whereas if you've got a really good amount of motivation or what's called eustress, right? Positive stress, coupled with that inner bamboo-like flexible strength and a lake-like stillness inside of you, The decisions you make will be sharp and on point and lead you in the right path. And living this way has changed my life. And this is often when I hear people say, well, I can't trust my intuition, or I can't trust myself, or whatever. I'm like, that's not your intuition you're listening to. That is your pattern. That's the lie that feels like the truth, you know? So if you're sitting there going, oh, I knew I shouldn't have done that. I knew it. You weren't listening to yourself. You weren't trusting yourself, the truest part of yourself at the beginning. And that's emotional intelligence right there. True, calm, aligned decisions never come with regret, remorse, or confusion. All right, now we're going to move on. One of my mentors said to me, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And that is something that really hit me, because it's true. If we aren't doing the practices and we're not doing the things to build up our adaptation and build up our emotional intelligence and build ourselves up in terms of awareness and self-management and all that kind of stuff, when something does happen, we're blindsided, we're not prepared for it, right? And you know, it's hard to move when you're in the thick of it, you know, especially if you're super triggered. It's really hard to remember to breathe when you're in that spot. But if you're practicing your breath work all along, you might have a moment of like, ah, and then you're like, wait, okay. And then you'll know what to do. And that's what I want to help prepare you for here today. Okay. So, we're going to move on to the strategies now for training your nervous system. All right. What I'm going to share with you is a little bit out of order from what's on the slide here, but we'll start with what I call the 1% challenge. Okay. Most of my clients are high achiever, type A, all or nothing folks. When I give them their homework, they want to do it all. They want it all, but then they do nothing. So then I give them one thing, and I don't give them anything else until they've done that one thing and they don't like it. They're like, no, I want all the things. And I'm like, you show me you can do this one thing and then I'll give you more. It's called behavior stacking. You pick one thing and then you do the next. You want to build on it. This is building new habits, right? Like you have to really rewire that brain, rewire those neural pathways in your brain. So instead of stacking bad behavior on top of bad behavior, you want to stack good over good. The next thing, feelings are going to feel. So try to learn a new way to deal with your emotions, right? They aren't good or bad. It's a feedback tool. So next time something comes up, lean way back and imagine yourself like a hawk would, right? Like they can see up to like 10,000 feet. And observe what your thoughts are. See if you can create some sort of separation between the running scattered mind that's like blah, blah, blahing, and how you're feeling. If you can get into like, what are you feeling, and write about it so that you can start to get a sense of what triggers you and why, and how you can respond differently next time. And if you're not sure how to label your emotions, this is really difficult for a lot of people. We're not really taught it in school. Maybe they do now, I don't know, but they didn't when I was a kid. You can download a feelings wheel from the internet. So you just Google feelings wheel, you can do that, and then like give you some words, like you'll know the feeling when you see the word. Or next time you're watching a movie or listening to music or something like that, see what moves you. See what or who moves you, and pay attention to why, and then write it down. The next one. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. If you're experiencing a lot of similar stuff from the outside world, right? It's usually an indicator of how you're showing up. So let's say you're wandering around, people are ignoring you. And you're like, what's happening? Why am I being ignored, right? Or they're being touchy with you, touchy or something, right? Check in. Are you ignoring you? Is your intuition saying something? Are you not listening to yourself? It's always a reflection back about how we're being. And this is where I'm a big proponent of personal responsibility and not putting all of our stuff on everybody else, right? That's how we evolve and become emotionally intelligent. So take a look at that. What are your thoughts? What have you been thinking? Your thinking has a lot, almost everything, to do with your reality. And people who thrive in uncertainty, face it. This is a key mindset tip here. They face it with curiosity and wonderment and trust and faith. right? So let's say you're heading into a dark alley and you're thinking, oh my God, this is going to be dangerous. What if this happens? I'm going to be attacked. Something bad's going to happen. The likelihood of that happening is because you're scanning, disaster hunting, remember? You're looking for trouble. But if you're like, I wonder what kind of interesting things I'll find here. Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like this at all. This does not feel good in my body. I feel really unsafe. I feel scared. I don't like it. I wish it wasn't like this, but I don't know, maybe something really good could be in this alley. Like, what if it's good? What if it's amazing? What if there's like a briefcase full of money and there's nobody around to claim it? You know, whatever. What if the love of your life is down there? Like, who knows, right? Just be curious and open in the face of uncertainty as much as possible. Now we're going to move on to breathing techniques here to help with your nervous system, all right? Your brain demands 20% of your body's oxygen supply. And most people take shallow breaths and almost stop breathing when stressed. And this puts so much pressure on your system and leads to really poor concentration, forgetfulness, mood swings, restlessness, depressed and anxious thoughts, right? Think about it. You're not getting oxygen. The brain needs it. And it handicaps your ability to make good decisions in the moment. Breath work is amazing at helping regulate the nervous system. It instantly calms you down. And the more you do this in your day-to-day, the more you'll remember to use it in that critical situation. I talked about that before, right? So here's a breathing technique that I use with my clients. So there's a lot of different techniques out there, but I'm going to show you what I do with my clients. So first of all, what I get them to do is just kind of shake it out, right? Like if they're in a heightened state or whatever, it's just like, let's just move the body. Let's shake your arms out, shake your legs out, you know, even sometimes I'll get them to jump up and down or whatever, right? And we're just like shifting the energy from that state to, okay, shake it off, right? Like Taylor Swift, shake it off. And then what I want you to do is, I want you to take we're going to do one together here. And just take a deep breath imagine from like the bottom of your spine, coming up all the way up to your brain, okay? And then when you get to your brain, and this is through your nose, and when you get to your brain, just hold on to your breath there for as long as you possibly can. And imagine that oxygen just filling your body up, okay? And then when you feel like you need to exhale, I don't want you to go, I want you to maintain composure and exhale through your nose really slowly, right back down that same line again, okay? So let's do this together. So we'll just settle into our bodies, and then you can close your eyes and then take that breath in, as big a breath as you possibly can, inhaling it up through your nose. And once it's up, hold it. I can hold it for a while. So I'm going to start letting it go now, just in case you can't, and that's okay. And then you just exhale it back out through your nose. Super slow. And that alone, massive shift. Look at my energy. It like went down 15 notches right there, just one breath, right? So now I'm calmer and I can think more clearly just after one breath, right? So imagine doing that for like a couple of minutes every day, training your system, taking deeper breaths, holding for longer, right? Like just training that over and over and over again will have a massive impact. The other thing that you can do in the moment as well, if you are feeling anxious or having some panic or whatnot, is emotional freedom technique or tapping. And basically this is used to help regulate the nervous system using acupressure points. And you can get like a specialist from a practitioner to go through a whole tapping sequence with you. but you can do it yourself. And, you know, just tapping like on your sternum right here in the middle of your chest is good. Sometimes even tapping on your face is really good. But if you're in a meeting or whatever, you can just do something like that. Just tap your fingers underneath the table or whatever. Tap the side of your leg or something like that. It's just like, it's a neurodivergent type tool that you can use in the moment. The next one is a 5-minute silent chamber. You can experience 50,000 thoughts a day. We experience 50,000 thoughts a day, right? Most are you're unaware of. I call them these wallpaper thoughts. Some are here to help you function, like move your arm. You don't think about that. But others are, you know, either that nasty voice in your head, you know, being mean to you, or whatever. Oh, I got to go pick up the groceries. Oh, I forgot bananas or something, you know? And I don't know what happened, but we live in this society now where silence is unacceptable. It's like, if there's a pause, people are like, what's wrong? It's like, nothing, you're just pausing. It's no big deal. Silence is okay. And we're so bombarded, like I said before, but then even in our own personal movement day to day, when we're going for a walk, we're multitasking, we're listening to a podcast, we're listening to music, we're talking to a friend. No, like just let's take 5 minutes to be alone and to be silent, right? So don't wake up and look at your phone straight away, right? We're surrounded by noise 24/7, right? And this is like adding to that craziness. Give yourself a break, give yourself 5 minutes where you're doing nothing and be present. And presence is basically just using your senses. What do you see around you? What do you smell? What can you touch? What can you hear? That's presence, right? And that's being in the moment. And that's huge for regulating your nervous system, right? And if you've got people in your life who don't let you have the quiet, you need better boundaries around that and be very firm. This is my time. I'm going to take 5 minutes right now, right? Don't come in the bathroom while you know, I'm in here kind of thing, especially if you've got little kids, right? And people avoid this because this is when all the emotional stuff surfaces, right? Once it's quiet, it's like, ah! That's why people can't sleep. You don't have enough emotional intelligence skills to know how to deal with all of that, right? And so using some of these today will help you retrain your brain. And you have to do these over and over and over again until they become a new habit. Doing it once is not going to give you one sit-up isn't going to give you a six-pack. Just this one breath today isn't going to help you in the future. It's something that if you get ready, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready, right? You're building the momentum. And I want you to lean into the discomfort. That is where the magic happens. And once you have one tool nailed, layer on top of it. The last thing I want to talk to you guys about today is pattern release. Change is possible. I've helped hundreds of people overcome these lifelong patterns over the years. When they focus on the right thing, the right things change, right? And what happens is there's like this progression of releasing that happens of our patterns, right? And it starts with this like realization, like, oh my God, what just happened in this hindsight moment where they're like, why did I react that way? And this is where a lot of people will first come in and they're like, this happened, I got into a fight here, or this happened here, and I don't know why. And I don't know what to do about it. And so we apply the tools that we talked about here today, right? And then that goes into level 2, which I call like the car crash moment, where you're able, and this is what I was talking about when you become like a hawk, right? This is where you're able to create some separation between your reactivity and what's actually happening, so that you can see what the stories are, you can see what your body is doing, you can see why you reacted, right? And so, you know, when there's a car crash, you're like, whoa, there's all that rubbernecking. It's kind of like that, but with yourself, right? And then you move on to level 3. And this is where you're catching yourself earlier in the process. And so you're aware now, you're conscious of your feelings, you're conscious of the buildup that gets you into that stage. And then you're like, oh, I feel it. I know what this is, right? And then you can stop it way sooner. Level 4 is when this pattern is so obvious to you. You're like, oh, I'm in it. I'm in the pattern. Got it. I know what this is. You just kind of sit there waiting for it to roll through. And then level 5 is when it's not even an issue for you anymore. And you look back and you go, wow, I used to be so triggered about that thing, and it doesn't even bother me anymore, right? Everyone's emotional response comes from some sort of childhood pattern, whether it was positive or negative. And the more you recognize these patterns coming up, the more you're going to see them in other areas of your life. And that's how you're going to build that super strong bamboo resilience. So the key takeaways from today is resilience is the ability to sit in the unknown and remain grounded in your power and decision making, right? Higher EQ means more money and success, right? I think we want that. And if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So be consistent in your self-awareness and self-management practices. That's it. That's what I've got.
Well, that is a time for us to go ahead and open up the floor to questions. I do have some questions here that have come in already. And so I'll go ahead and remind our attendees that you're welcome to put questions in the chat, and we'll see if we can answer as much as we can during the time we have left.
Yeah.
So you talked about the bamboo and concrete analogy.
Yeah.
And so what this question kind of has to do with that. Can you talk about the relationship between being flexible, but also having boundaries?
Mm-hmm.
Those seem to be opposed to each other in some ways.
Exactly. Okay, so that's wonderful. Yes, because we can get into like that flexible being like people pleasing, where we're being too malleable and almost a murder to it. So this is why it's important to know who you are and what your emotions are, and what is a yes for you, what is a no for you, right? And so that's a lot of like that personal development work as you're getting to know yourself, right? And so let's say somebody is asking you to do something, right? And you're like, I don't have the time for this. I want to be able to help, but I don't have the time. A lot of people will go, okay, I'll fit it in. I'll figure it out a way to do it. Da, 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 da. That's the unhealthy spectrum of it, right? That's where you end up getting like, that would be the opposite. That would be more like water than it would be concrete, right? So that would be just like, oh yeah, just like drowning in obligations. Concrete would be no, like being super harsh about it. I don't have that time for this, the freaking out and all that kind of stuff. Whereas in the middle, the bamboo is like, oh, you know what? I would absolutely love to help you with this thing. Right now, I've got these things on my plate. The earliest I'd be able to help you would be Thursday. Is that going to work for you? And if that can't work for you, maybe you might want to just find somebody else. And it's about being genuine in your response. And the thing that people forget is that you're important too. And saying no to somebody isn't going to make them not like you. And if it does, maybe they shouldn't be your friend. Like we want people in our lives who are going to be supportive of us as we are of them, right? And this comes from self-worth and worthiness and having the confidence to say, I'm important too. And that's where that 5-minute silent chamber comes in, because you're important too, and your needs and your boundaries are important. Right? So it's not that whole people pleasing, like, yes, just give me all the things. It's not that, I can't handle this anymore. It's my first available opportunity will be, of course, I would love to help you. And my first available opportunity will be blah, blah, blah.
All right. Can you talk a little bit about emotional intelligence again? And you talked about the different points of emotional intelligence. How is that actually measured?
There's actually a quiz that you can take. You'd have to get the book for it. So the book is Emotional Intelligence 2.0, Travis Bradbury. So they have a quiz in there.
Can you talk a little bit about how you might be able to increase your emotional intelligence?
It's really the things that I've already talked about, just start there, right? Like it's all about self-awareness and self-management. So the more we can be aware of how things affect us and why, and where they're coming from, the more we can go, we can have those aha moments, right? We all have those aha moments. It's like, oh yeah, that makes sense why I do that. And if you're somebody who's super curious about who you are and why you're here, you know, this work is a lot of fun, because it's like, oh, now I understand myself a little bit more. I know who I am now.